to the Shutter Sports Refresh. I'm your host, Lucky Roberts, giving you all the major news in sports from December 9th to 15th. We've got a ton to cover today, so let's get right into it. To begin, we've got some big news in basketball. The NBA Cup has reached its finals after having the quarterfinals and semifinals earlier in this week. In the quarterfinals, it goes as follows. The Milwaukee Bucks took down the Orlando Magic. This one was easy to predict, as the Magic have gone without their superstar Paolo Banchero for a while now. The Atlanta Hawks took down the New York Knicks, which was a very surprising victory. But the best team in the West, the Oklahoma City Thunder, made easy work of the Dallas Mavericks, and the Houston Rockets also took down the Golden State Warriors in a game that came right down to the wire. This game ended in a scramble for a loose ball where a foul was called and Jalen Green knocked down the free throws to win the game. This is what happened in the semifinals. The Milwaukee Bucks took down the Atlanta Hawks thanks to a near triple-double from their superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo. Although the Hawks lost this game, a lot of their players credit the NBA Cup for giving themselves a real mojo boost and really finding their groove this season, as they've continued to be really impressive this season. And then in the West, it was the OKC Thunder taking on the Houston Rockets, and the OKC Thunder would take down the Houston Rockets, meaning the finals going down tomorrow night between the Milwaukee Bucks and the OKC Thunder. Tune in next week to see who wins it all. Staying on a little bit of a tournament theme, we've got the college football playoffs about to start very soon. The games get started this week on December 20th. Here are the matchups. Ohio State facing off against Tennessee, Texas against Clemson, Notre Dame and Indiana facing off, Penn State versus SMU, who snuck in over Alabama. Advancing to the second round through bye is Oregon, Arizona State, Georgia, and Boise State, because they are the top 4 conference winners. Tune in next week and we'll let you know how the first round of matchups went. Let's stick to the topic of football as we move on to our next piece, the NFL. Week 15 of 18 is finishing up tonight, as teams that are on the bubble are still searching for that playoff clinching game. As of this week, the teams that have clinched so far are as follows. In the AFC, Kansas City and Buffalo Bills have already clinched, and the unexpected Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans also clinched with wins this week. The NFC, the teams that have a spot are the Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, and Minnesota Vikings. Let's go to some big games over the past week. The most impactful game in the standings so far went between 2 NFC teams, the Seattle Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers. The Packers won the game with ease, just about securing their spot in the playoffs, and the Seahawks, on the other hand, are now going to have to scramble in a really busy NFC West to keep their hopes alive. The Washington Commanders grabbing a win over the New Orleans Saints, keeping them in the playoff hunt. They have an 82% chance now of getting in, and they're currently in that 7th playoff seed in the NFC. The Baltimore Ravens took down an already eliminated New York Giants and are looking about a 99% chance of making the playoffs. As a wild card, the Ravens have last year's MVP Lamar Jackson, who's been amazing and looking like this year's MVP as well, if Josh Allen doesn't have anything to say about it. A big surprise is the Denver Broncos, who, after starting the season slow, have now stormed into the playoff race. After winning their game against the Indianapolis Colts yesterday, their chances are now at around 91% of getting in. We're getting into the 3rd week of the PWHL season, which means we should check in on the standings of how each team is doing. At the top of the standings are last year's champions, the Minnesota Frost. They're led by a ton of great scorers on offense and goalie Nicole Hensley on defense. In the 2nd place are the New York Sirens. They have a top point scorer in the league so far, Alex Carpenter. Now that we're checking out some standings, let's move on to the NHL. In the Atlantic Division, the Toronto Maple Leafs are on top of last year's winners, Florida Panthers. In the Metropolitan Division, it's the Washington Capitals and the New Jersey Devils fighting for that top spot. In the Central Division, it's the Winnipeg Jets, who came off storming at the beginning of the season. They're a little cooled off, but they're still in first place there. The Minnesota Wild are right behind them. And finally, in the Pacific Division, it's the Vegas Golden Knights on top. In the Champions League of Soccer, the match day 6 of 8 has went down this week. Liverpool took a win against Girona, keeping their undefeated record and securing the top spot in the league by 3 points. They're definitely the favorites to win it all right now. Moving down in the standings, we have a whopping 6 teams tied with 13 points. The only one of those teams who took a loss this week was Inter, who got taken down by Leverkusen. Leverkusen now sits in 4th, while Inter is now in 6th. It's now time for a big break in the Champions League. The next match day isn't until January 21st. And that's all the news I have for you today. I've been your host, Lucky Robert. I hope you learned something today on the Shutter Sports Refresh. You can check me out and Shutter Sports Media on these socials right down below as well. Don't forget about Finn Noel, the writer of this episode. Thanks for watching.